and we have everybody here that I think we're going to have here. Is that right, Mark?
Correct.
So I will call the meeting to order of the Forest Lake Airport Commission, February 4th at 6 p.m. Mark, would you like to take the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Steeler,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Munson,
Here.
Commissioner Bain.
Here.
And that is it this evening. We have two absent. I need a motion to approve the agenda of this evening.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Second, with non-debatable motion, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, it passes. Open forum, this is the time of the meeting where anyone can come to the podium, sign your name with your address, and tell us your name and address. It's for anyone to talk about anything. We'd kind of like it to focus on the airport, but you're welcome to speak on anything. We'd like to keep it to 3 minutes, but I'm not gonna hold a stopwatch on you. So feel free, and if anyone wants to speak at the open forum. No? Well,
I'll take it.
There you go.
Introduce myself. My name's Corey Capra. I own and operate Aerotech companies. We actually serve you guys at the airport on your maintenance of your field there.
Oh, okay, yeah, I saw your name on our last meeting.
Yes, we appreciate that and happy to help out in the service of the airport. I'm here today just to check out, get an update on what's going on with the future and future plans. So I appreciate you guys having me, and if we can be any help in any other future ways with anything, we'd be happy to. So,
Great, thanks for stopping in today,
yeah,
Corey.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Rich, you're just dying to get... Okay.
Nothing new at least.
Okay. And if, we'll give it another few seconds. I don't think anybody's, well, there might be somebody on their way in. I see a shadow out there. Well, that's the mayor, so he won't be coming to that podium anyway. So, anybody else? If there's nothing else for the open forum, we'll close that portion of the meeting and move on to the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? I guess since I was the only one here of anybody, I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. I don't know that we need a second or...
Yeah, you should have a second, and there's nothing wrong with voting for minutes that
Yes.
you weren't at, so.
I wasn't at the meeting, but have read through them and am comfortable with making a motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Or seconding the motion.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the meeting of the December 3rd meeting. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
There we go, 3. Okay, we will move into the regular agenda portion of the meeting. And I printed out some, but let me just scroll forward past the minutes.
And Mr. Chair, as we did last meeting, we're presenting some financials and invoice lists just that you're not maybe accustomed to, but I think we had a nice little revelation last week or last meeting, and so that was working out well. I apologize for if someone's got a paper copy, it didn't print out very great, but I did want to kind of just go through the financials since it is year end here, and we do have information on where the airport fund kind of ended the year. As we discussed last time, our finance staff did a nice job of pulling out the costs that we are associating with capital improvements, and just to look at the operating costs of the airport. And the good news is here is that the unaudited, and I'll make that note that these are unaudited, so this is just sort of first glance at year end, but we have obviously an audit that comes in the next few months here. And the results of that say that we made a couple bucks at the airport this year, so that's good news for everybody. There were some notes just about why that was, both good and bad in terms of things that happened to us over the year that were kind of out of our control. One is that we didn't have an airport manager for a couple of months, so there's a little bit less on the wages part of it until I got onboarded in March or so. And then we had some issues with our fuel pricing and our fuel supplier moreover, and that took a while to sort out and didn't do well for our fuel sales throughout the year. I think I noted in the memo that a couple years ago, we cleared about $18,000 in fuel sales as a net profit. And this past year, we were only going to be around 4,000 or so. So that's good news in the sense that we're still kind of broke even or made a couple of, I think, around $3,000. And I think we can do better on fuel sales next year. However, again, there'll be a little bit more on wages because there'll be a full year of my portion of my salary on that. So all in all, I think it's good news for the operational components of the airport that we are operating pretty sustainably when we don't factor in capital costs. And so with that, I would kind of take any questions on the financials or the invoices that we are, the claims against the airport. So.
Mara, did you have something?
So, Mark, you know, in the time since you've been here, you're kind of settling into a little bit more of what the kind of the operational situation is with the airport. What do you expect the long-term allocation should be for that salary and benefits for, in particular, your role? Is 10% the right mark? Is some of that kind of still in transition? What do you think long-term?
Yeah,
knowing what you know now.
I know we have a long standing record and good data on the public works side of things, and we do feel like that 30% of one person is, whether it's really 30% of one person or 15% of two or whatever it is, right? That is a good number. We feel like the 10% of my salary, as long as I am, and for the foreseeable future, I will continue to be the airport manager. We don't have a staffing plan that includes anything different right now. I do feel like that is a good number. 10, 11 months into my career here, I do feel like that is working out. I think a lot of it depends on what's going on with the airport, right? I mean, we've got a lot of capital investments we're making, but those are also largely handled by our engineer. I think a lot of the past, just hearing history as I've been here now 11 months and folks talking to me about the airport, a lot of it had to do with, sort of problem hangar owners that were doing things out of bounds, right? And just trying to deal with that, those issues. And so absent some of those issues, I think it can be a fairly, I don't want to call it an easy job, but
Yeah.
my job's very hard, Mr. Mayor. But, I think it can be a smooth, and a fairly routine, set of tasks that I do, preparing for these meetings and those type of things. So long answer to a short question, but I do think it's appropriate, and I would intend that we have the same allocation in the 2026 budget, which is what it is in the current budget. So
Thank you.
something certainly to monitor, though.
Anything else, Mara or Curtis? I'm looking at the revenues side of this, and I know I sent you an email, but on a separate note, I won't get into the past stuff, but at least not yet. But there's the city has a hangar out there, a 6-stall T hangar. A T hangar these days rents at Lake Elmo for between $200 and $250 a month. That would be about $18,000 a year. Now I don't think we're renting out any of those stalls, are we?
We have one still that's.
Oh, do we have someone in there? Okay, because I know last time I was in there, and it's been a while, Public Works is utilizing some of the space, which I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with, but,
Minimal amount, I think, at this point. but
okay.
Yeah.
But that would be, we're just putting these up here for the sake of discussion. Anyway, they're not dollars that are actually changing hands. I would think there should be dollars in here for the use of that space if it's being used by another department.
Yeah, I
If it's
think-
airport space.
And I can verify this, but I think any current lease money we're getting from that one tenant in there yet shows up in the lease line item here.
Right.
But to your point, could we rent out more space there? It's my understanding, and I haven't brought this to this commission yet, but it was my understanding that there was sort of a decision to divest of that building at some point.
At some point, I think
Yeah,
that's
and I
probably
think-
going to be needed when we expand that into the airport, that there will be a new lot lessee takes over that
Yeah, I
perhaps,
think
or however it happens.
My
but-
understanding was that purpose of divesting of it was more on the, just it's a failing building and we don't want to
Okay.
continue
That's my
pouring
understanding
money
as
into
well.
it.
Okay.
So the idea was to let whoever's got a lease there and is kind of using it to
Okay.
play their string out and not
Okay.
force them out, but not invite any new leases in there. Something we could revisit, you know, if we were looking for revenue streams and building, but my
I
understanding
mean,
is the building's
in
pretty
the
rough shape.
big picture, it would be great if our airport had T-hangars to lease out. But in the reality of things, our city is not in the business of managing any other property. So that would be a difficult thing to throw into our mix, I think, because it would hold, so, and I think that avenue has been looked down before in terms of the cost and the cost of constructing that type of a hangar, and the dollars and cents haven't worked out in the past. But whenever we get to, you know, developing that into the airport, it might be worth revisiting to look at. But anyway, so, you know, other than that, I'm not going to make any issues about this sheet. It's only for the sake of internally looking at things, so. And then going on from this, I think you went on to the, I do think there should be I've, out of shock, I have found that people in the city office, including yourself, weren't aware that hangar owners pay property taxes.
Yep.
And I know we've had the discussion that property taxes shouldn't be in these lines because the people we vote for in city council, they get to decide how those monies are allocated. I think there should be at least a footnote property taxes on hangars are not included here, or something, you know, a fourth footnote. So anyway, that way, at least when somebody who doesn't know is looking at this, oh, property or hangar owners pay property taxes, they can see that. It's acknowledged in the sheet rather than people not knowing and then making assumptions based on
Yeah, I
that
think
lack
that's
of knowledge.
An excellent point. I believe it was in my memo, I mentioned it, but I don't, you're right, on this one sheeter, it's not noted in it.
Yeah, I didn't see it on there. Anyway, so I don't know if you want to run through all the expenses. I don't know that we need to go line by line on $25 items. I think they all look fine to me. We need to make a motion to approve the payment of the bills. I'll make a motion that the city
Advisory
council.
commissions make a motion to approve the financials.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to the city council that they that approve the financials of the airport and the let's call it the bills.
Claims, yeah.
Claims, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have the cover sheet. And the claims as stated in the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Curtis. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Okay. I take it that you're handling the engineering report today?
Yeah, Silas, I told him that there wasn't probably a need for him tonight. We didn't have anything that particularly going on for him. Just an update for folks in the audience as well, just, you know, we did receive the grant funding for what was really 3 projects, the taxiway extension, the runway extension, and the apron expansion. All 3 of those grants were approved by MnDOT. They also approved a request that we had to put in to receive more than $1 million in any fiscal year. So they approved that as well. And then the city council did approve these grants at their last meeting and awarded a contract for the taxiway and runway project, which will be done as one construction project, those two different projects in terms of, they're 2 different grants. But and then we gave our engineer the go-ahead to design the apron expansion and get that out to bid, and so he is working on that. The rules and regulations, I really wanted to have that at this meeting, and I know it's been a long time coming here, but we're getting close, I promise. Our attorney and our community development director just need a little bit more time to make sure that these rules integrate with our zoning code and are working seamlessly. So we anticipate that coming back to you at the next meeting. The north hangar lot layouts is something we've had on the agenda for a while. I think it's really just a holdover from the last time. And then we are talking in number 5 about, you know, is even though we've done a number of grants recently and we've got a lot going on, we have a lot of interest in the airport, and there may be some things that we need to look at next. And those things may knock on our door sooner rather than later, and so we're gonna start to bring some of those things to you as we move forward here. So that's really all on the engineer's report. I would take any questions.
What was, I was scrolling through here too quick, what was the total that MnDOT is funding for us this year? It was over $1 million, right?
Yeah, let's see. It's 1.77 million. I'm sorry, that's the total project cost. They'll be
One
at
point, was
90.
it 1
1.77 is the total of the 3 projects. MnDOT has 90% of that, so.
okay, so 90% of 1.77 million.
Is it the 1.3 plus the 270,000?
That's what I
Correct,
come up
correct,
with,
yep.
so almost
Okay.
1.6.
1.6?
Yep, sounds about right.
1.6 million. Okay, we'll go with that. I was just curious. All right. I don't have any questions for you on the engineer's report. Curtis, Mara, no? And so we just move on from that? We don't need to approve anything there?
Nope.
Move on to internet service at the AD building.
So, Mr. Chair and Commission, at the last meeting, we looked at our claims list, and someone mentioned that, boy, it looks like we're paying a lot for phone service, and so I did a little digging and to see what that $175 bill was. It turns out it is not just a landline, but it is a internet service to the AD building, the arrival departure building. And in talking with Midco, just kind of like a lot of us do with our cable and internet bill, you kind of talk through do I have a better option here? And what I'm essentially recommending, if you want to kind of go to the second page of that memo, the options there are what Midco offers. And really we have another provider there, but their service really wasn't going to be adequate for what we needed. Currently, we have 200 megabytes, and we're on like a month-to-month type of plan, and so that's $135 a month nominal charge for the internet. And we think very easily that we can get by with 100 megabytes, and you know, if you cared to lock into a longer-term contract, you'd save a fair amount of money there. So it would be $85 a month. So it is staff's recommendation to move our internet service down to 100 megabytes and lock into a longer-term contract to save some money there.
That seems like a logical thing to do.
Yeah, and just, you know, the internet is out there not just for Wi-Fi, but we do have, it does run the credit card system
Yeah.
and the security camera system as well. So that's why we need these fixed IP addresses that the other service did not provide.
So you do have security cameras out there. I was going to ask you about that.
I think that's what Dave told me.
I was hoping you did. I didn't. I haven't been in the AD building in a while.
I
So
believe there is at least one security camera out
Okay.
there, yeah.
okay. Someone want to make a motion?
Move to approve as staff recommends.
That's too short. Okay, we'll accept that. All right.
Any more words?
Well, I'm used to more words, but I'll accept that. That's fine. I'll second that. I'm to recommend what staff recommends. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? No? If so, all in favor, say aye. Aye?
I
Okay, we'll go with that. Going back to the agenda on D, item D is selecting officers for 2026. We are missing 2 folks tonight, so I'll let the mayor decide if you want to go ahead with this. But before we do, there's 4 positions here, and I know this probably goes back to ancient history and how the commissions were written up. I see absolutely no reason for a treasurer or a secretary anymore. I don't know what you think, Mr. Mayor. If you want, I'll make a motion that we eliminate those positions from the commission as a first step, and then we can decide if we want to.
I would defer to staff on that to confirm that there really isn't not a need.
You know, and as I'm looking at this, I think the treasurer is it's a mistake on the agenda. If you look at the memo, I took the clip out of the city code, and it says the commission shall designate one of its members as chairperson, one as vice chair, and one as secretary. So certainly,
But minutes are automated now, right? They get,
well, this would not just be the minutes, this would be the city code. And so the code tells us this commission should have these three positions.
oh,
So what we would certainly entertain is a motion from the commission to suggest that the council revisit this part of the code and determine whether or not that position's
yeah, I'll
continues
make
to be
that
needed.
motion that the city council of Forest Lake revisit the officers required for the airport commission to confirm whether or not a secretary is still needed for this commission. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Mara. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so with regards to a chair and a vice chair, I'll ask city staff and the mayor, what would you like to do? There's only three of us here this evening.
So what are the roles? Obviously, you're chair. Who's vice chair now, currently? Do we know?
I might be Mark, but I honestly don't know, because Joe was relatively new, so
Actually, the minutes,
was it Curtis?
yeah, the minutes
Oh,
say
congratulations.
Curtis is, yeah.
No.
So on the EDA last week, we let the commission decide those roles. So I'm open to whatever the commission feels comfortable with. those.
I don't want to hog the position. I'm happy to do it, but I don't want to hog the position, and the other two aren't here this evening to speak.
I mean, I'm inclined, I hate voting for this role when there's only three of us.
Yeah.
And had there been a full slate, I would certainly nominate you for chair again.
Thank
Like, I
you,
think
Beth.
you're doing a fabulous job in that role. But again, I think it's, if it's okay for us to wait until our next meeting,
Okay.
that would be my preference. I also know that we have had, a number of meetings that are only three, so hopefully we have a larger group this next time.
Okay, so do we need to make a motion to postpone this portion
No,
until?
I think that's.
That's just
fine.
enough, what we did?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item E, declaring default on the land leases on the vacant lots. And just to bring everyone up to speed, there's 3 lots, or I guess I'll let you go on with that, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 3 vacant lots, as we have 3 vacant non-commercial lots. Those would be lots number 6, 19, and 27. And they're all currently under lease, so someone holds a lease on the lot and has been paying the ground lease for that since the lease has been signed each year. But the leases, all 3 of them have a clause that says that a hangar needs to be built on these within a 2-year time frame. And I think one of the leases was signed in 2015, the other 2 were signed in 2017, so we're well past the 2-year threshold there. And, that may not be as big a deal. You say, well, they're paying the lease rate, what do we care? To your point earlier about property taxes, we're not collecting any property tax on those lots. And then second of all is that we have a waiting list of what's looking like it will still be about 25 people long. And so that it seems a compelling reason to get folks to move along here. So we have an airport, we got a lot of money invested in this, we want people to use it. And so I think the other part of this is that MnDOT funds just about everything we do out at the airport. And so if we're gonna talk to these 25 folks and try to find a way to get them some more hangar lots, MnDOT's gonna look at us and say, well, you got 3 empty ones, why would you want our money to build more?
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah, we've been pushing to get those built.
yeah,
So you reached out to these folks?
I have, yep. And they all, got back to me in some way, shape, or form, and, all expressed still an interest in doing it. Some with, a little bit more level of urgency than others, but, so what you have in your packet tonight is a memo I asked our attorney to draft up, just because we're dealing with leases here and we got to, you know, legal documents. And her suggestion was that we, the lease, all 3 leases have a clause that requires a 30-day notice to the leaseholder to allow them to remedy it. Of course, you can't build a building in 30 days.
Right.
So that's a little unrealistic. So her suggestion was that we give them 30 days with which to contact me as the airport manager and negotiate a separate agreement that says we will build or I will build a hangar on this lot by such and such date. And I think what we're asking from the commission tonight is, A, are you okay with this, the language of this letter, and having that sent out to those 3 owners or leaseholders, and then some guidance from you as to the parameters with which I would negotiate those agreements. It's my thought that certainly no more than 2 years, but probably 1 year is more appropriate. You know, at least maybe pulling a building permit and beginning construction prior to the end of this coming summer seems appropriate.
Yeah, there could be some, because of the seasonal stuff, it could be coordination-wise when you get into our winters and stuff, you really need to, yeah, if you're gonna build a hangar, you gotta break ground kinda early summer to have it closed in. But I'm not an attorney, so I'm not gonna question her language in here. She knows the ins and outs. This has been an issue in front of the city for a while, so I'm gonna trust that this will get them moving. Does it need to be 2 years? Or is you know, maybe you stayed 18 months to pull a permit? Because you're gonna send this letter out when? By March 1st or next week?
Tomorrow, if
Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow's for February 5th. If we give them a year, if they pull a permit, how quickly do they have to build after they pull a permit?
6 months is, generally speaking, is really the only timeline. You have to do some construction activity. If you do absolutely nothing for 6 months, your permit expires.
Okay, so if we give them a year, then they have to pull the permit by that year. So they'd have to pull the permit by February 1st of next year, roughly. And so they'd have to build by next summer at the latest. Yeah, so I don't, if we want to put a 1-year time to pull a permit, that works, I think. Yeah, unless, you know, any other commissioners, do you have any other thoughts? Is that reasonable,
They've had a
reasonable
while.
timeframe?
I
And
mean,
they've had how many years? 10 years, so, yeah, I think that's a reasonable time.
If I may, I think just one other requirement would be that I would want to see a completion date. So even though building permits don't come with a completion date, the language in the lease says that construction of the building shall be completed and the building usable for its intended purposes within 2 years of the commencement. So the lease is contemplated, you got to finish too, right? So that's the last thing we want out there is a half-built thing. And so in whatever agreement I come to with them, we would have a completion date on there as well.
And you want 2 years, you think?
I think no
that's
more than that,
more
for
than
sure.
enough, yeah. Yeah, I agree, that's,
Yep.
yep.
Sounds good to me.
So you want a motion to approve this, or is this good enough, just this discussion?
A motion would be appropriate, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed letter from the city attorney with a time frame to pull a building permit of 12 months from now, or I suppose February 1st of 2027, and a completion date of 2 years. That's from the date of the pulling the permit?
I would say the leases say it's 2 years from the signing of the lease, and I would say a year from the pulling of the permit.
A year from pulling of the permit. Is there a second? Or, yeah,
Yeah, I'll second.
Curtis seconds it. Motion and a second. Any other discussion on this? Without any other discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll hopefully get those 3 lots built out. Land lease rates for 26 and 27. So let me scroll back down. There we go. And Mark, I will let you introduce where you want to go on this.
Yeah, so back in July of last year, I kind of brought this forward as the new guy in town here. I had to kind of look at, we were preparing to send out the annual lease invoices, or whatever you want to call them. And I wanted to make sure that our accounting staff was doing so appropriately, so I read some of the leases and came to understand that we only look at lease rates every 2 years. Not every lease says that, but enough of them do that we try to do that, where we only do it once every 2 years. And so I sort of set the table at that time to say, here's how I'm looking at the lease rates as we come up to what would be March of 2026, which is what the leases, some of the leases say is the appropriate time to revisit those. And since we don't have a meeting in March, here we are in February, and a number of the leases talk about the consumer price index as a way to establish the reasonableness of the rates. And in my view, there are sort of two different ways to read that. One is that is the reasonable rate, you shall use the CPI. I think another way to read that is that all else being equal, one of the things you could look at to see if it's reasonable, it would be the CPI. And that as long as it's around there, then we shouldn't argue about it. That's reasonable. However, if there are other circumstances that would necessitate higher rates, then we would look at higher rates. So as we discussed that in July, there was some pushback to the second view of it there, and that, no, the CPI really should be used, and we shouldn't be looking at things like capital expenses and whatever the operating costs of the airport are. The lease didn't say we're gonna cover all the costs of the airport. It just says this is my lease rate and it could be increased by the CPI. So with that view, I approached this task of looking at that, and the reason you use an index, and the reason indexes exist as opposed to sort of just an annual number, is that you can always go back to any point in time and re-true up yourself to that index. And so that is what I did, is went back to the point in time where we set the initial lease rates at 9 cents a square foot in 2009, and then trued that up to today's CPI index number. And that is the staff-suggested rates that are being proposed for both the non-commercial and commercial lots. I think I'll let members express their view, but I think the general idea is that, no, we should just look at our existing rates and then apply a 2-year CPI growth to that set of rates, and whatever we did in the past is what we did in the past, and we move on. And so we would just apply the current CPI to that past practice, or the current rate, excuse me. I think what the trouble I have with that is that in years when, for whatever reason, we don't raise rates, we have no ability to then ever, quote-unquote, catch up. And we have hamstrung ourselves, and for, I think, a 5-year stretch or so, we did not increase rates. And so I don't know how to recover from that miss. And so, other than the way I'm proposing here. And I think, again, that's the beauty of an index, is that you can always do that. So those are my thoughts, and I'm happy to hear yours.
Commissioners?
I mean, I guess I was looking over this, and I went back and pulled some minutes from previous years. And in 2024, we increased the rates by 2.6%, which is what the CPI was for that year. And in 2022, we increased the rates by 7.2%, which is what the CPI was for that year.
For the
So,
2 years.
For the
Two-year jump.
well, it doesn't say, it just says.
Well,
CPI.
that's what
But
we
yeah,
were-
for the 2 years.
Because
for
that
the
was a
2-year point.
COVID and the CPI was
Yeah.
relatively high.
And I understand what you're saying about the catch-up. My problem, I guess, is, or my problem I have with that is just, that's quite a big jump right now. You know, if we're gonna try to catch it all up at once, you know, where the CPI for the last 2 years is like 4.8%, but then if we were to go all the way back to 2009, it's, I don't remember the math. I think it was like 13 point some percent, or,
Yeah, the catch-up would be
Yeah,
13 something.
so
yeah.
I mean, that's quite a jump.
Sure.
So, I also found a staff memo from the March 2024 that says in 2018, the Airport Commission recommended and the City Council agreed to use the Minneapolis-St. Paul area CPI. So, I mean, it's kind of been past practice that we've been going by every 2-year CPI. I mean, if we want to discuss somehow to catch up, not all in one big chunk,
Yeah.
I guess I would be open to that, but kind of doing it all in one lump sum is a bit hard to swallow.
Sure.
So on what you said, I didn't remember that meeting, but I know I've had that discussion. I expect, I mean, if the city raises my lease rate by the CPI, I can't argue that. CPI is a very common number used for indexing and use. So, and it's stated actually word for word in some of the leases and not in others, but it's referred to as a market comparison, and I didn't see any market comparison in your agenda or your minutes. So, and all previous increases that we have made as a commission and a city have gone from here to the city, and they've approved them. Or if they didn't approve them directly, they approved the number we're at right now. So in doing the computation for, you know, the last 2 years to this year's, as Curtis said, I think it comes out to 4.8%. I don't know if you need those. The number, I think, for 2025 was 306.806, and for 2023 was 292.72, and you do the math on that, it's 1.048, so 4.8%. So I have, again, increased it by the 4.8, and that's our rate for the next 2 years from where we are right now. But I completely disagree with this, or any catch-up, because everything's been approved to date by the city. So why would we, I won't even go down that road because there's so many rabbit holes to go down. But I have no problem with the CPI as a rate of increase on the lease rent, which would mean that we increase I think our rate right now is it 0.117 for a non?
Correct.
Is that okay? And you multiply that times a 4.8% increase, it becomes 0.1226, if I did the math right? You can, okay, take my word for it anyway. But anyway, and then that would be the set rate for the year 2026 and 2027, and then in 2 years' time, we do this again and do that. So I have no problem doing that.
Say that one, say what I have no problem doing that. Say that again.
Here, I just applying, okay, the new calculated rate per the full CPI increase would be 4.8%, or 1.048 times the current rate, which is $0.117 per square foot, which equals $0.1226 per square foot. That rate is set for 2026, 2027. And we do this again in 2 years, but if the city says we're using the CPI, it's just the same, you just plug and chug the same numbers. I mean, maybe, automate it and just make it the CPI, if that would make it easier for everybody. There's no way I can argue the CPI. I'd love to at some point. I mean, we have a possibility of having over 100 hangars out there. If we have 100 hangars out there paying property tax and ground lease rent, we're taking in, even at today's rates, it'd be over $250,000 a year in property tax and ground lease rates. In which case, maybe there's not a need to increase it per the CPI, but that's a ways down the road.
I think that's also that represents the current challenge, right? We aren't at that spot, and operations are what they are. So how are we funding?
Well, I disagree with that part of the discussion, because the city, I think I made some notes, so I don't want to misstate. The city, this goes back a little in history, but the city acquired the airport for the benefit of the city of Forest Lake, not for the benefit of any hangar owners. There were no hangar owners. There were no hangar lots. The city acquired the airport for the benefit of the city, period. Okay? So the city knew there were going to be operation costs. They knew there were going to be capital improvement costs. My hangar lease, and I can't speak for all of them because there's more than one out there, makes no reference whatsoever that I, as a hangar lot lessee, am responsible for the operational costs of the airport or the capital improvement costs of the airport. It would be like if you, Clear Lake has, how many houses are on Clear Lake? Do you know, 200, 300 houses? Let's say 300. Has one boat launch, okay? Okay, every homeowner on that lake has to use that boat launch, right? They don't have a choice. Every year that boat launch is damaged, requires maintenance during the year. I remember last year it got resurfaced or whatever, probably thousands of dollars. But you don't send a bill to those lakefront owners, do you? Never have. Right? Because that's public space. The water is public space. The boat launch is an access point to public space.
Homes aren't leased, and I think.
But the lease, again, okay, well, that's perfect. But the lease does not state anywhere in it that the lessee has any responsibility for the cost, the operational cost of the airport or the capital improvement cost.
I hear what you're saying.
That's a
I ha-
contract
But I
that-
have to me, that is just foundational in the lessee-lessor relationship, that there is, a part of any lessee-lessor relationship and part of any rent calculation is always the operating cost that the lessor is incurring. The rent is always going to reflect that cost structure, and so I.
No, that's maybe that's implied by you.
well,
If I rent
absolutely.
an apartment, I don't give a rat's ass what it costs. I'm paying the rent. That's what my lease says I'm paying the
Your
rent.
rate is going to be, that lessor sets the rent rate.
Right,
based on
but
the
it
underlying
sets,
operating
and
costs.
if they raise the rent and I don't want to pay it, I move out. I haven't invested
I
$350,000
understand what you're
on that
saying.
piece of dirt.
I understand what you're saying. This is why I think we have things like the CPI in to help guide that, because there is a long-term relationship there. But I just can't fully support rents not reflecting the underlying operating costs. And I think there's some optimism in the financials that we see this last year, and I think there's some optimism going forward, especially with some of the growth that's out there, but we're in this period of time where
Yeah.
things are tight, and it's how are we getting through this,
And so maybe it's a discussion for further down the road if everybody's in agreement that moving per the CPI piece, it's CPI, Consumer Price Index, of the 4.8% right now. Because once we could do this expansion that we're talking about, this million, whatever, there's not a whole hell of a lot left to
Yeah,
expand.
But I think the part that everyone associated with the airport needs to recognize is that the city has covered there was this pretty significant investment that the city just made as a result of the change in state funding and the fund balance, discrepancy, and those are real general, property tax dollars that are being used to support the airport. That,
As the city made that decision when they acquired the airport.
but this is that partnership, right? Part of that is because of the expansion of those projects, and
You didn't have to do the projects. You're getting $1 million, $1.6 million free. I mean, you can pass on that. Be idiots to do it, but
we all said we would be idiots to do it, which is partly why we did it. But again, the totality of all of the facts, I think, need to be part of how all decisions are made. And so this, very myopic view of here are the leaseholders, because those leaseholders are primary users of that airport.
oh no. Over a given year, hundreds of aircraft land at that airport and take off that are absolutely not associated with any hangar. There's military aircraft that come in, helicopters that come in. There's medical evac helicopters. There's aircraft from the state patrol that come in and out. There's a hell of a lot of use. It's just, again, I go back to the boat launch. There's a hell of a lot of people that use a boat launch that do not have lakefront property. We don't charge them, we don't charge the lakefront owners.
I think
It's
if I
part
may-
of the community when you have that as a part.
Chair Steeler, I think, going back to your lake
Yeah.
thing. We have the weed harvester is a service the city provides that lake as an acknowledgement that the community as a whole gets a benefit there. But there's a partnership there with other entities, and in fact, I believe the homeowners association
Lake Association.
kicks in some there.
Yeah, but that's not that has nothing to do with an access point to the public space.
Well, sure, but similar.
I'm talking about having an access point to the, you're talking about improving the quality of the water. That would be like talking about improving the quality of the air that I'm flying in. I think that's an apples and oranges comparison. I'm talking about the pure access point to public space is that boat launch. The pure access point to public space is that runway. The only reason I have a hangar there is because I can't take my plane home and put it in my garage. A boat you can take home, put in your garage. I think there's a big difference there.
So I want to understand a little bit more of the mechanics and I couldn't explain to somebody else, and I think I probably would need to. I need to be able to. How is it that we got out of sync? Why is it that by going through each year and making the adjustment to CPI, how is it that now that we're out of sync and that there is this foundational need for a catch-up? What's different in the interpretation that you're proposing that's different? Like, I don't know if I could still articulate what that difference is.
The only way we got out of sync is we didn't do the CPI. We did 0% increase from 2009 to 2014.
Yeah,
Because we just, as a city, chose
Where the airport commission / city council chose to have 0 increase.
no increase.
it was a grass strip at that time too. The operational costs were probably less.
But see, then you're tying it to the operational cost.
That's what I mean. But well, I see what you're saying. But yeah, but that would mean if the discussion came up, though, that's what it.
See, I think that's the fundamental problem, Don, with all due respect, is that you just framed the reason for a 0% increase on operational costs being low, but we're not willing to frame a larger increase on operational costs being
No,
high.
I'm not. I didn't say that was acceptable. I wasn't here in 29 through
But you
14 or
reasoned-
17.
But you reasoned.
No,
why-
absolutely
why
not.
people
I just stated it wasn't. That may have been the reason they used back then. I have no idea. I wasn't here.
Yes.
I also, I haven't said these words out loud, but I just, the same exact argument when we were talking about rates related to the golf course. Like, I just feel like for a municipality with the pressures that, pay attention to property taxes all over the state right now and double-digit property taxes all over the state. Municipalities are under immense pressure to have where we can have fees and make things a user-based structure and have things be self-supporting. There is immense pressure to allow for that. And when, council's making tough decisions on projects of all sizes, yes, just, these airport projects have a 90% benefit from the state, which is wonderful, but also the size of the city contribution is also sizable. And so it's a dance that we need to do of true partnership of, what is the cost and how are we funding this together? And, when I look at the dollar amount of the change, it feels like, given the opportunity for everybody at the table, we're kind of fighting over pennies. It's not that much. And so.
You talk about the money's not there. When the city acquired the airport, again, going back in history, okay, they acquired it for the benefit of the city, not for the benefit of the hangar owners. And when they did so, they acquired such a mass of land that was associated with that airport that they sold it off for millions of dollars. Okay, that's where, Mark, you weren't here then, but that's where the YMCA is. That's where the county and the library office is. That's where the hockey arenas are, and I think there's ball fields over there. It's where there's commercial buildings down there. The city took in millions of dollars, and they could have taken those dollars and set some aside for operational costs of the airport, because that's where that money came from. And that's what should have been done, and it wasn't. And that's not the hangar owner's fault. But you're making it the hangar owner's fault.
No, what I'm saying is that lease fundamental to any lease relationship
disagree.
is some level of
No, that's not true.
operating. Well,
That's not true, and the language in the lease is clearly stated. Absolutely not. And the fact that I invest $350,000 in a building based on the language in that lease. I can't just walk away and say, sorry, I don't like the way you're changing the terms of my lease right now. That's a whole different animal than what you're saying. So I have, if we want to move forward, I have no problem with moving forward with the 4%, 4.8% increase and holding that for 2 years. You want me to make a motion? I'll make a motion. I'll recommend to the City Council of Forest Lake, I make a motion to the City Council of Forest Lake to increase the ground lease rent by 4.8%. The new rate shall be applied for the years 2026 and 2027. Thus, for the non-commercial hangar lots, the ground lease rate would increase from currently $0.1170 per square foot to now be, I have this, $0.1226 per square foot. And similar rate increase would apply to the commercial lots. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'm struggling to follow your math.
Oh, sure. What do you need?
Well, I think we may have a foundational disagreement, but I'm struggling a little bit to follow your math.
Oh, well, if you go to his table that shows the CPIs, you see the 2025 one he has highlighted in yellow down there? 306.806?
Correct?
Then go up 2 years
Yep.
to the 292.72.
72,
So
okay.
divide one by the other, you get 1.048.
Yeah, I can't. Well, is there a second?
Is there a second?
Are we done discussing, or?
Well, can we?
We should have a second before we continue discussion. That really be the better.
Okay.
Are you willing to, willing to withdraw your motion, and so we can have some additional discussion?
Sure, I will withdraw my motion so we have additional
So
discussion.
I understand where you're heading. So your math is essentially, let's follow the path that we've traditionally followed.
Since I've been here in 2018.
I understand. And I think, and I have supported that path for as long as I've been on council, 8-year history of supporting that math. But I'm also open to, I'm open to there being, again, some additional factors considered. And I guess maybe where I'm uncomfortable with staff's position on where staff has, landed at this number is that it is based on this catch-up. And I am struggling with, if we're going to deviate from CPI because of X, Y, Z, whatever the reason is to deviate from CPI, let's do that, but let's not do it and call it just a catch-up because we didn't adjust rates. I feel like we're looking, I feel like when I say we, staff is looking for a rate increase that is driven by CPI, but it's a catch-up, and I appreciate and agree with, a catch-up isn't really necessary unless we're all going to agree it was a flat mistake, and that the votes that have been taken for the last 10 years have been just a flat mistake, or the votes to not raise was a flat mistake. And if we're at a spot where we need that number to be higher, I would rather say, well, let's just not call it a CPI catch-up. Let's call it what it is, and we're making this deviation and continue this conversation. I'm not sure we're ready to make that tonight. Maybe council is. I think we're here to kind of guide the discussion, but I feel like it's worth, if we're moving away from CPI, let's kind of articulate what that is, and I think there's got to be some guardrails. The reason why CPI is in here is so it's an index we can go back to, recognizing these are long-term ground leases, that there needs to be some level of reasonability given to leaseholders, that we're not going to just have a 30% rate increase. So let's kind of articulate what that is, rather than looking for it to come from a CPI catch-up. That's where I'm struggling, again, on kind of what the right path is here.
Yeah, well, that's, I was trying to articulate earlier, that, you know, just jumping and catching up all at once is hard to swallow. If that's the decision.
To your point earlier, Commissioner Bain, I don't mean to diminish our discussion, but we are talking about probably a $2,000 difference overall. I think the catch-up, quote unquote, was a $3,500 increase in our revenues at 4.8%. I haven't done the math, but I gotta imagine that's about a $1,500 jump or so. So we're probably talking about the difference of $2,000 total.
$2,000 total across all leaseholders.
That's correct.
I mean,
So while
and
we-
if that's the difference, I'm not sure it's worth the ill will that ultimately comes from that.
Agreed.
You know, certainly the amount of the fund balance loan that was provided was substantial, and again, for reasons, smart reasons that we all agreed to, that was the right thing to do. But I think what's challenging is, you know, in these next couple of years where we're very lean operating, it's how are we bridging that gap? And doing so in a way that keeps the public supportive of the airport. I know that is a challenge.
Can I make my motion again?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it more.
I make a motion to recommend to the Forest Lake City Council to increase the ground lease rent by 4.8%. The new rate shall apply for 2026 and 2027. Thus, for a non-commercial hangar lots, the ground lease rent rate would increase from $0.1170 per square foot to now be, I have this on a separate page, unfortunately, $0.1226 per square foot. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Point of clarification. So this is a recommendation to council, is that correct?
Correct,
Right,
yeah.
and council ultimately decides. I think, because of I think the fundamentals of what we're talking about is important. And it's worth additional discussion. The dollar amounts that we're talking about is not worth the fight, in my opinion. So I will, vote to support this tonight. I think that, again, given the dollar amount, let's keep the consistency and not make this the fight of the day. But again, we've got some tough decisions here in the next couple of years, so.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. What is next on the agenda? Discussion.
Just an update from myself
Oh,
as
yes.
the airport manager here. So we do have a lot going on at the airport. I wanted to just report on a few of those things. I think the next airport commission will be another busy agenda. We do have a couple of things here. Just wanted to update everyone on, we had a number of complaints about the fuel dispensing system, in that people had questions about credit card charges. And I think we've gotten to the bottom of that, in that there is, depending on your bank, there will be a hold put on your credit card when you use the gas dispenser or the fuel dispenser. And that hold will go off after a couple of days or even a couple hours, depending on the bank. And so we put a placard up there now that says, hey, by the way, you should know that this
Okay.
might happen to you. So we haven't had a call since we put the placard up.
That's good.
Hopefully people are reading that, so. We did, we've been doing some random website audits in terms of updating information, and our airport section of the city website was pretty out of date, so we got some information from Silas there and got some nice updated information on the website. We just took care of the Midco bill, we'll do that, so we'll get a little bit of savings there. Our O&M grant reimbursement, our accounting staff has submitted that, and we anticipate that coming through here in mid-February. As I mentioned, I've been revisiting the waiting list, so I've called everyone on the waiting list who didn't have an email address associated with their name on the list, and now have an email address for everybody. I think I ended up calling about 10 people, and only 2 of those 10 dropped off the list. And so the list
Really?
was 32 people, so.
And we've never advertised or sent out any notification. That's just word of mouth that they happen to
Right, and
call.
so.
So there's
I've got
some
a-
demand out there for,
I do have a couple of thoughts there, and I think I'll be bringing some of those thoughts to you on how to engage with that group again, because, you know, as we get these 3 lots, folks deciding whether or not they're gonna build on those, and then we'll look at what we could do for expansion of the
Yeah.
lot areas, so. We have had some interest in the commercial hangar spaces as well, or the commercial lots. We are discussing with the leaseholder on Hangar 1, a potential tenant, a new potential tenant in that building, and may bring back some information for you at the next meeting on that. There are some logistical issues there that we're working through. Might end up being some revenue sources there as well, and may end up discussing, oddly enough, that how could someone rent space for a period of time to kind of secure adjacent space for expansion in the future, and could we give them some sort of rate to do that and reserve that space even without building on it. So, of course, there would be a time limit on there. So.
Sure.
I mentioned the rules and regulations. We hope to bring back to you at the next time as well, and then we just discussed the hangar lease rates. So I think we're in good shape there, so.
Before we move for a motion to adjourn, should we run through everyone? Start with the mayor. Any comments?
Nothing tonight, just other than thanks for your service.
Mark, nothing else? Your report? Mara?
Nothing from me.
Curtis?
No, sir.
I don't have anything, so we're just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 7:04.